So think about the sound.
Right.
That is usually where the legend of this guy starts. Not the gunshot and not the jingle of spurs,
Yeah.
but the cough.
Yeah, that wet, hacking, persistent
But
cough.
exactly. The cough that signals a man who is basically already a dead man walking. I mean, you can picture the scene right now. A smoky saloon somewhere in Arizona.
Smells like sawdust.
Sawdust, stale beer. And sitting there right at the faro table is this gaunt figure. Pale skin, hollow cheeks, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit.
He pulls out a fine linen handkerchief.
Coughs into it. And when he pulls it away, it isn't just damp. It's spotted with bright red arterial blood.
It is the absolute defining image of the American West's most tragic anti-hero.
Yeah.
It's the image that literally stops the piano music in the saloon.
And immediately, right now, I know exactly who you are picturing. If you're listening to this, you are seeing Val Kilmer.
Oh, totally.
You are hearing the I'm your Huckleberry line.
The tin cup spinning on the finger.
Yes. You are seeing the cool, detached killer. But today, on this deep dive, we are doing something a little different. We are holstering all those preconceived notions.
Yeah.
We are taking that Hollywood caricature, which is brilliant, by the way.
It's incredible cinema.
It is. But we are putting it aside.
Because the truth is just stranger and, frankly, a lot darker.
Exactly. We are looking at a massive stack of source material today. We have the definitive biographies by Karen Holliday Tanner and Gary L. Roberts.
Yep.
We have contemporary newspaper clippings from the Dallas Weekly Herald and the Tombstone Epitaph. We even have court transcripts. And our mission here, to find the actual human being buried under, well, a century of myth.
And the human being we find in these sources is infinitely more complex than the movie character. I mean, we aren't just talking about a gunfighter here.
Yeah.
We are talking about a classically educated Southern aristocrat, a doctor of dental surgery, a man who spoke Latin and French.
And a man who was living on borrowed time from the age of 22.
Which is the most important part.
That is the core theme that kept jumping out at me during the research for this deep dive. Fatalism.
Yeah.
The psychology of a man who has quite literally been given a death sentence.
That is the key to the whole lock right there. To understand Doc Holliday, you have to understand tuberculosis.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a disease for him. It was the engine that drove his entire personality. It stripped him of fear because the worst thing that could possibly happen to him, death, it was already guaranteed. He was just waiting for the date.
So let's unpack this properly. Let's go back to the very beginning, because usually when we do these deep dives on Western figures, we are talking about poverty,
broken home,
illiteracy. We are talking about like Billy the Kid stealing butter to survive.
Right.
But that is not John Henry Holliday.
Far from it. This is really a story of lost potential. John Henry Holliday was born on August 14th, 1851.
In Griffin, Georgia.
Griffin, Georgia. This is the Deep South, pre-Civil War. And the source material emphasizes this heavily. He was born into the upper crust.
His father wasn't some frontier drifter.
No, Henry Burroughs Holliday was a man of significant standing. He was a major in the Army, a veteran of the Mexican-American War.
And later an officer in the Civil War.
Exactly. He was a major landowner. We're talking about a boy who was baptized in the Presbyterian Church. He was raised in a home with servants, and he was expected to carry on a very proud family legacy.
Which means young John Henry was raised with a very specific code of conduct.
The Southern Honor Code.
Right.
And this is crucial context for literally everything that happens later in Tombstone. In that time and place, your reputation, your family name, it was worth more than your life.
You didn't back down from an insult?
Never.
Yeah.
You defended your honor with violence if necessary. That was the air he breathed growing up. He was a gentleman first.
And he was incredibly well educated. The notes mentioned something called the Valdosta Institute.
Yeah.
This wasn't a one-room schoolhouse situation where you just learned to sign your name and maybe count cattle.
Not at all. It was a classical education that rivals what you'd get at a high-end prep school today. We're talking rhetoric, grammar, mathematics, history.
The languages, though, that really stood out to me.
He was proficient in Latin.
Yeah.
He knew French fluently, and he had even studied ancient Greek.
It changes the image completely, doesn't it?
It really does.
When you picture him later in those dusty cow towns arguing with illiterate cattle rustlers, he's operating on a completely different intellectual plane than everyone else in the room.
He's probably insulting them in Latin, and they don't even know it.
Exactly. He was an intellectual elitist in a world of roughnecks.
And he followed that path into a professional career. This is the part of his life that usually gets glossed over in the movies. In 1870, at just 19 years old, he leaves Georgia.
Heads north.
Heads north to Philadelphia to attend the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery.
Now, I think modern listeners might hear a phrase like dentist in the 1870s. Think of, I don't know, a guy with a pair of rusty pliers and a bottle of whiskey in the back of a barber shop.
A lot of people do think that.
But this source material says otherwise. This was a serious, legitimate medical degree.
It was the cutting edge of science at the time. The Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery was one of the premier institutions in the entire country.
Wow.
This was a rigorous curriculum. He had to write a thesis. He studied anatomy, chemistry, physiology, surgery. He graduated on March 1st, 1872 as a doctor of dental surgery.
And here is a detail I absolutely love from the Karen Holliday Tanner biography. He was actually too young to graduate.
Yeah, he was a prodigy.
He finished the coursework 5 months before his 21st birthday.
The college literally had to hold his diploma in a vault until he turned of legal age.
That's amazing.
So picture this. It's 1872. You have a 21-year-old Dr. Holliday back in Atlanta. He's brilliant, he's respectable, he's handsome, and he's setting up his dental practice. The world is completely at his feet.
And then the floor drops out.
The tragedy. And to understand the weight of this, to really get why it broke him, we have to look at his family history, specifically his mother, Alice Jane Holliday.
The sources say he was incredibly close to her.
A mama's boy, in the best possible sense of the word. She was his absolute anchor. But when he was 15, she died of tuberculosis. Consumption, exactly, as they called it then. And it wasn't a quick death. It is a wasting disease. It literally eats you from the inside out.
He watched her wither away.
He tended to her. He was at her bedside. And then he watched his adopted brother, Francisco, die the exact same way.
So when Doc starts coughing in 1873, shortly after starting his shiny new practice, he isn't wondering what it is.
No.
He knows.
He coughs, he looks down, he sees the blood, and he knows the script. He goes to the doctor, and the verdict is handed down. Pulmonary tuberculosis.
In 1873.
Right. There are no antibiotics. There is no streptomycin. It is almost 100% fatal. The doctor gives him months to live.
Months. He's 22 years old.
22. Imagine that. You are listening to this right now. Put yourself in his shoes. You've done everything right. You've studied, you've graduated, you've started your career. And the universe just tells you.
It's over.
It's over.
The medical advice at the time was, well, it was questionable, right? Go west.
It was the standard palliative care of the Victorian era. The doctor said, go to a drier climate. The air in Georgia is too humid. It fills the lungs with water. Go to the high desert of Texas or Colorado. Maybe it will extend your life.
But let's be clear about the psychology here. He isn't moving to Texas to start a fresh new life full of hope.
No.
He isn't going west to be a cowboy or an adventurer.
He is going west to die.
That distinction is everything. He's entering a hospice phase, essentially.
Exactly. He packs up his life and heads to Dallas, Texas. And initially, he tries to fight it. He tries to keep the respectable dream alive. He partners with a Dr. John A. Segar. He opens a dental practice. And he was really good at it.
I saw the note about the Dallas County Fair. This actually made me laugh out loud when I read it in the source material.
It's a fantastic detail. They enter the dental competition at the fair.
The dental competition?
Yeah. And Doc Holliday sweeps the awards. They won Best Set of Teeth in Gold.
Wow.
They won Best in Vulcanized Rubber. They won Best Set of Artificial Teeth and Dental Wear.
So he was a real craftsman.
He was a skilled artisan. He could construct complex dental appliances.
But you can't be a dentist with active TB.
No, it's a completely visceral problem. Imagine you are a patient in the chair.
Right.
You have your mouth wide open and your dentist leans over and has a violent, bloody coughing fit right in your face.
Yeah, I'm never going back to that dentist. I don't care how good his gold teeth are.
Exactly. It's terrifying and it's unhygienic even by 1870s standards. His patients stop coming. His practice just collapses.
So the income dries up. He needs money to live, even if he's dying. He has to eat, he has to pay for his hotel room, and he discovers he has another talent.
He has a highly mathematical mind. Remember, he was a student of logic and math back in Georgia. He turns to cards, specifically faro.
We should pause on faro for a second because it's not really a game played anymore. It's not like poker where you're bluffing against other players.
No, faro was the absolute dominant game of the Old West. It was basically betting on the order that cards would be drawn from a dealing box by the dealer, who is called the bank.
Okay.
It had better odds for the player than most casino games, But to be really good at it, it required intense concentration and a perfect, almost photographic memory for what cards had already been played.
And Doc was a natural.
He was brilliant at it. And in the West, professional gambler was a recognized trade.
It wasn't just a hobby.
Right. It wasn't necessarily respectable like being a banker or a lawyer, but it was a real profession. You paid taxes on it, you listed it on the census.
So he trades the fine dental drill for the deck of cards. And this is where the violence starts to creep into his life. But we need to do some myth-busting here. There's a persistent story about why he left George in the first place. The swimming hole incident.
Right. If you read the old dime novels or even some of the early biographies from the mid-20th century, they say he grabbed a shotgun and killed 2 or 3 black soldiers who were swimming in his favorite spot in Georgia.
It's painted as this massive act of racial violence that forced him to flee the state ahead of the law.
But the modern historians aren't buying it at all.
Gary Roberts and Alan Barra did the legwork on this, right?
They did. They scoured the historical records. There are no police reports. There are no army records of missing soldiers in that area, no newspaper accounts.
And in a small southern town during Reconstruction, killing federal soldiers would have been massive front-page news.
It would have brought the entire Union Army down on the town. It simply didn't happen.
So where does the story come from? Did he invent it?
Likely Bat Masterson invented it. Later in life, Masterson wrote a series of articles about famous gunfighters for a magazine, and he loved to embellish. He probably invented it to give Doc a dark bad man origin story.
So we can scratch that off the list. The swimming hole incident is a myth. But the trouble in Dallas, that was real.
That was highly documented. In January 1875, he gets indicted for illegal gambling.
Okay.
But then he gets into a serious disagreement with a saloon keeper named Charles Austin. They trade gunfire in the street, nobody is hit, and Doc is eventually acquitted, but it's the start of a pattern. He gets fined, he gets arrested, and he moves on.
He becomes a wanderer, the typical frontier drifter. He goes to Denver, Cheyenne, Deadwood. He's hitting all the legendary boomtown spots. And he's getting meaner.
Well, the disease is progressing. He's in chronic pain every day. He's drinking heavily to manage the symptoms.
He's medicating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his temper is shortening. In Denver, he's dealing faro. He gets into an argument with a guy named Bud Ryan. Doc doesn't just punch him. He pulls a knife and nearly cuts Ryan's head off.
He leaves him seriously wounded.
Right. And then there's the incident in Breckenridge, Texas. This one sounds brutal because Doc actually loses this fight.
The Henry Kahn incident.
Doc beats this gambler, Kahn, with his walking stick during an argument. He just humiliates him in front of everyone. But the feud doesn't end there. Later that day, Kahn finds Doc, who happens to be completely unarmed at the time, and shoots him.
Just shoots him in the street.
Yeah. It was a very serious wound.
How serious?
Serious enough that the Dallas Weekly Herald actually printed his obituary.
Well, wait.
They reported Doc Holliday dead.
He really was the cat with 9 lives.
Or just incredibly hard to kill. His cousin actually had to come out west to help him recover. But recover he did, and eventually he drifts down into Fort Griffin, Texas. And this is where the cast of characters really assembles for the main event of his life.
Enter Big Nose Kate.
Mary Catherine Horney, a fascinating figure in her own right.
She really is. I feel like she often gets reduced in pop culture to just Doc's girlfriend or the prostitute. But the source material paints a much more vivid, complex picture. And first, can we clarify the nickname Big Nose?
Yes, contrary to the playground insults, the sources suggest it wasn't about the physical size of her nose at all.
Oh, really?
It was because she was nosy. She was intensely curious. She got into other people's business. She wanted to know everything going on in the saloon. Kate was Hungarian by birth, highly educated, and spoke multiple languages.
So she was smart.
Very smart. She ran away from home to avoid being put into the foster system after her parents died. She worked the dance halls and the brothels because she wanted independence. She didn't want to be owned by a husband or controlled by a father.
And she and Doc, it was exactly a standard romance novel.
It was volatile, incredibly toxic at times. They fought bitterly, they broke up, they got back together, but they were intellectual equals.
That makes sense.
They were both outsiders. You have the educated European woman and the dying Southern aristocrat, both stuck in this gritty, unwashed frontier world. They understood each other in a way no one else did.
And Fort Griffin is also where the most important friendship of his life begins. The fateful meeting with Wyatt Earp.
It's a legendary moment in Western history. Wyatt Earp is a deputy U.S. Marshal at the time, and he's tracking an outlaw named Dave Rudabaugh. He ends up at Shancy's Saloon in Fort Griffin. The owner, John Shancy, tells Wyatt, "If you want to know where Rudabaugh went, you should talk to the gambler over there. He played cards with him last night."
And that gambler was Doc Holliday.
It's an odd pairing from the very start. Wyatt is a teetotaler. He doesn't drink. He's stoic. He's a dedicated lawman. Doc is a drunk, a dying man, a highly volatile gambler.
But Doc helps him.
He does. He tells Wyatt that Rudabaugh headed back to Kansas.
And that favor sparks something between them. But the bond really solidifies a bit later in Dodge City, right? The life-saving incident.
Dodge City, 1878. Doc and Kate are there. They're posing as Dr. and Mrs. Holliday. He's actually trying to practice dentistry again.
He really wanted that respectable life back.
He did, but the coughing stops it again, so he's back to dealing cards. The story, and I have to put a caveat here, this comes largely from Josephine Earp's memoirs written much later, so we have to take it with a grain of salt.
Right. Memoirs are notoriously generous to their authors.
Exactly. The story is that Wyatt was surrounded by a bunch of cowboys, led by a guy named Ed Morrison. They had their guns drawn on Wyatt. They had him dead to rights.
And Doc steps in.
The story goes that Doc was playing cards in the back room, saw the trouble, kicked over the table, and put his pistol right to Morrison's head, forcing the whole gang to drop their guns.
I'll be your huckleberry.
Wait, did he actually say that then?
Probably not. And honestly, historians heavily debate if the event happened exactly that way at all. Contemporary newspapers in Dodge City didn't report a big dramatic showdown like that. But, and this is the key to the whole relationship, Wyatt Earp believed it happened. Or at least he publicly credited Doc with saving his life that night.
Exactly. Even if the details were embellished by Wyatt over time, that moment cemented a loyalty that baffled literally everyone else in their circle. Virgil Earp, Wyatt's brother, later said that aside from the Earps, he didn't think Doc had a single real friend in the entire territory.
Wow.
But for Wyatt, that loyalty to Doc was absolute and unbreakable.
So the stage is set. We have the friendship, we have the dangerous reputation, and now they all move to the place that will define them forever in history. Tombstone, Arizona.
September 1880. Doc follows the Earps to Tombstone. The silver boom is on, money is flowing. But the trouble starts almost immediately. And we really need to explain the politics here because it's so often missed in the movies. This wasn't just lawmen versus outlaws. This was highly political.
Right, it was basically Republicans versus Democrats, wasn't it?
Right, it was basically Republicans versus Democrats, wasn't it? Exactly. The Earps were Northerners. They were Republicans, representing federal control, town building, and business interests from the North. The Cowboys, the Clantons, the McClorys, they were Southerners. They were Democrats, representing the rural agrarian resentment against the townsfolk. Many of them were former Confederate sympathizers.
So Doc, a refined Southern aristocrat, is actually siding with the Northern faction here.
Which made him a massive traitor in the eyes of the Cowboys. He was a Southerner who had turned his back on his people to run with these Northern badge wearers. That added a deeply personal layer of hatred to the conflict.
And the Cowboys try to use his weak spot against him. They go after Kate.
The stagecoach robbery accusation. This is a crazy, messy story. In March 1881, the Kinnear and Company stagecoach is attacked. The driver, a guy named Bud Philpott, and a passenger are killed. It's a botched robbery. Rumors immediately start flying around town that Doc Holliday was one of the masked robbers.
Which begs the question, why would a dentist-turned-gambler who makes good money at Faro need to rob a stagecoach?
Well, he liked money, potentially. But mostly, the Earps had powerful enemies in town. Sheriff Behan and a saloon owner named Milt Joyce. They desperately wanted to get at the Earps to ruin their reputation, and Doc was the obvious weak link.
So what do?
They find Big Nose Kate. They get her incredibly drunk, dangerously blackout drunk, and they have her sign an affidavit implicating Doc in the murders.
That is incredibly low, weaponizing his own partner against him.
It's rough politics, Tombstone style. Doc is arrested for murder. But the Earps scramble. They do the legwork and find witnesses who completely prove Doc was elsewhere during the robbery. And once Kate sobers up, she realizes what she's done. She recants everything. She says she was manipulated and intimidated by the sheriff.
The charges against Doc are dropped, but the damage is done. The tension with the Cowboys, the Clantons, and McClorys just boils over.
It pushes everything toward the breaking point. You have the Earps and Doc on one side, the Cowboys on the other. Which brings us to the most famous date in Western history, October 26, 1881.
The gunfight at the OK Corral.
Or, more accurately, the gunfight in the vacant lot on Fremont Street near the OK Corral.
Right. It's not as catchy for a movie title, though.
True.
Now, I want to focus specifically on Doc's role here. because Virgil Earp, who is the town marshal, makes a very specific tactical decision regarding Doc right before they walk down that street.
Virgil deputizes Doc. Think about the gravity of that. He takes this volatile, sick, unpredictable gambler and pins a badge on his chest. But he also does something strategic with their weapons. He trades weapons with Doc.
The cane for the shotgun.
Right. Doc usually carried a walking stick. Virgil takes the stick to appear less threatening as he approaches the cowboys as a lawman, and he gives Doc a short coach gun, a sawed-off shotgun. Doc hides it under his long overcoat.
So Doc is walking into this confrontation with a literal handheld cannon concealed under his jacket.
They meet the cowboys, Ike and Billy Clanton, Frank and Tom McClory. It's a very small, narrow space between two buildings, 15, maybe 20 feet wide. It's cold. The wind is blowing dust everywhere. Words are exchanged. And then, complete chaos.
The witnesses disagree on who fired the very first shot, but we know exactly what Doc did.
Doc immediately closes in on Tom McClory. Tom is trying to get a gun, maybe from his horse's scabbard, maybe from his belt. Doc pulls that short shotgun from under his coat and fires point blank. The blast hits Tom dead in the chest. It was devastating. He was killed almost instantly.
And then the pistol fight ensues in this tiny, smoky space.
Frank McClory, who is already wounded but still fighting hard, challenges Doc. He reportedly yells at him, "I've got you now."
And this is the line, the famous line.
Doc's reputed reply as he stands there, "Blaze away, you're a daisy if you have."
You're a daisy if you have. What does that even mean in 1881?
We really need to unpack this Victorian slang because it sounds weird to us now. A daisy meant the best of something, a humdinger, a real pro. He is basically saying to Frank McClory, "You're a champion if you can actually kill me." It is the ultimate expression of that fatalism we talked about at the start. He is standing in a narrow alley in a hail of lead bullets, staring death right in the face, and he is taunting it. He is basically saying, "Take your best shot. I've been dying for years anyway."
He does get hit, right?
A bullet grazes his hip, cuts right through his holster. He yells out, "I'm shot right through." But he survives. When the smoke clears, the cowboys, Billy Clanton, and both the McClorys are dead.
And you'd think that would be the end of it. The bad guys are dead, the lawman won the day, but it actually just starts a massive, bloody war.
The vendetta. This is where the story shifts from a standard law and order frontier tale to a full-blown revenge tragedy. The remaining cowboys retaliate. Virgil Earp is ambushed at night and maimed for life. His arm is shattered. Then Morgan Earp is assassinated, shot through the back while playing billiards.
The legal system completely fails the Earps, so Wyatt takes the law into his own hands and launches the Vendetta Ride. And Doc is right there. He is deputized federally this time.
He is right there beside Wyatt, sick, coughing up blood, barely able to sit on a horse some days because of the pain, but he rides. And this leads to the killing of Frank Stillwell at the Tucson train station.
The sources say Stillwell was found full of buckshot and bullets.
It was an execution, pure and simple. They found him lying in wait for Virgil, who was trying to leave town on a train, and they finished him. But this entirely turns the tables on them. Now, a warrant is issued for Doc and the Earps for murder. They are technically fugitives from justice.
They are hunting cowboys while simultaneously being hunted by the local sheriff's posse. And this leads to the Iron Springs shootout.
This is a scene right out of a modern action movie. The Earp posse is ambushed by Curly Bill Brocious and a group of cowboys near a watering hole. Wyatt Earp performs a miracle, essentially. He walks directly through a storm of gunfire to kill Curly Bill with a shotgun. But Doc is there too.
Doc is under heavy fire.
Doc, along with the others, has to retreat rapidly because they have absolutely no cover. But notice what he does. Another member of their posse, a guy named Texas Jack Vermillion, has his horse shot out from under him. He's pinned to the ground. Doc Holliday turns his horse around, riding back under intense fire to help rescue him.
Again, that fierce loyalty.
Always the loyalty. He wouldn't leave a man behind, even if it cost him his life.
But, and here is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a little uncomfortable. That loyalty has a limit, or at least the famous friendship has a breaking point.
The split. This happens in Albuquerque, 1882. The group has finally fled Arizona. They're safely in New Mexico. And something happens between Wyatt and Doc at a place called Fat Charlie's The Retreat Restaurant.
This detail really surprised me. I had never heard this part of the story in any of the movies.
It's often left out of the pop culture retellings because it makes our heroes look, well, deeply flawed. They have a massive falling out. The cause, according to a letter written much later by the future Governor Otero who witnessed it, was a slur that Doc made.
Unpack that for us. What happened?
Wyatt was staying with a prominent local businessman named Henry N. Jaffa. Jaffa was Jewish. Wyatt was honoring his host's religious traditions. He was reportedly touching the mezuzah on the doorpost when he entered. Doc, who was drunk, saw this and made a nasty comment about Wyatt becoming a damn Jew boy.
Oof, that is rough.
Wyatt was absolutely furious. He walked out, and that was effectively the end of their close daily association.
It's a stark reminder that Doc was a man of his time, a Southern aristocrat from the 1850s with all the prejudices and bigotry that came with that upbringing.
Exactly. We can admire his bravery and his loyalty in a gunfight, but we absolutely cannot ignore the ugliness of his character. He was a complex, highly flawed human being. They remained friends from a distance after that, but the legendary dynamic duo was broken for good.
So Doc is now on his own. He drifts up into Colorado, and this is where his luck, or maybe just his terrifying reputation, starts to catch up with him in some really weird ways.
He's arrested in Denver. The Arizona warrant for the Frank Stillwell murder is still active. Arizona wants him extradited immediately. And Doc knows if he goes back to Arizona, he will be murdered by the cowboy faction in his jail cell before he ever stands trial.
But then an old friend shows up, Bat Masterson.
This is one of my favorite Old West legal maneuvers. Bat Masterson is now the police chief in Trinidad, Colorado. He hears about Doc's trouble in Denver. He wants to help him, but he can't just break him out of jail with guns blazing, so he fabricates charges.
He makes up a fake crime.
Entirely. He claims Doc ran a bunco game, which is a gambling fraud, in Trinidad, Colorado. He argues to the governor that Colorado has a prior claim to prosecute Doc before Arizona can take him across state lines. The governor agrees, refuses the extradition to Arizona, and keeps Doc in Colorado to face these fake charges.
Which eventually just magically disappear.
Precisely. They evaporate. It was a brilliant legal sleight of hand to save his friend's life.
Amazing. But Doc is deteriorating rapidly now. The TB is destroying his lungs. He's drinking incredibly heavily and using laudanum to manage the daily pain. But he's not done with shooting people quite yet.
The Billy Allen shooting in Leadville, Colorado in 1884, this one is tragic in its sheer pettiness. Doc is completely destitute. His health is gone, his money is gone. He borrows $5 from a bartender named Billy Allen.
$5?
Which is equivalent to maybe $180 today. Doc can't pay it back. Allen, who is a big, tough guy, he outweighs Doc by 50 pounds at this point, threatens him. He says, "Pay me, or else." He is actively hunting Doc through town.
So what does Doc do? He can't fight him physically?
He goes to Hyman's saloon, sits down, waits for Allen, and when Allen walks through the door, Doc just shoots him.
Over $5.
He hits him in the arm, severs an artery. Allen survives, but he never uses that arm properly right again. Doc is arrested, goes to trial, and to everyone's shock, he is acquitted.
On what grounds? How do you shoot a guy over a $5 debt and walk away?
The no duty to retreat law, and the fact that Allen was undeniably hunting him, making threats. The jury looked at this dying, 116-pound, frail dentist coughing up blood and this big bully who was threatening him, and they sided with the dentist.
Now, we have to address one big mystery before we get to the very end of his life. Johnny Ringo.
Ah, yes, the great movie myth. The climax of the film Tombstone, where Doc shows up in the forest, surprises Ringo, says, "I'm your huckleberry," and shoots him dead.
It's such a good scene. My hypocrisy knows no bounds. I mean, it's iconic.
It is excellent, top-tier cinema. It is absolutely terrible history.
Break our hearts. Let's hear the truth.
Johnny Ringo was indeed found dead in Arizona in July 1882, shot through the temple. It was officially ruled a suicide. However, theories have persisted for decades that Doc went back across state lines and killed him for Wyatt. But the court records are explicitly clear. At the exact time Ringo died in Arizona, Doc Holliday was standing in a courtroom in Colorado answering for larceny charges.
So he literally has a rock-solid alibi in the state court records.
He does. The geography and the timeline just don't work at all. It's almost certainly a complete myth.
Okay, so we're in the final act of Doc's life. He moves to Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Why there?
The natural hot springs. He desperately hoped the sulfur vapors rising from the springs would heal his lungs.
Did they?
Probably the exact opposite. The harsh sulfur fumes likely irritated his damaged lungs even more. He is only 36 years old, but his hair is prematurely white, and he is entirely bedridden. He works as a faro pit boss for a tiny bit, but his body just completely gives out.
November 8, 1887. The deathbed scene.
It's a very quiet end for such a loud, violent life. He wakes up in his bed at the Hotel Glenwood. He asks the attending nurse for a glass of whiskey. She refuses because he is actively dying. He looks down at his feet. His boots are off.
And he says his last words.
This is funny.
This is funny. What did he mean by that?
Think about his entire adult life. The gunfights, the ambushes, the knife fights, the fatalism. He always assumed, he knew deep down, that he would die violently. He would die with his boots on in the dirt of some street, probably shot to death. To die in a clean bed, bootless, just looking at his bare toes. That was the ultimate irony. The universe played a massive joke on him at the very end.
And even his burial is a bit of a mystery, isn't it?
It is. He was buried in Linwood Cemetery up on the hill in Glenwood Springs. But because the ground was deeply frozen that November, it was a very difficult burial. Some say they had to bury him elsewhere temporarily. Records were lost over the years. Today, no one knows exactly where his physical body lies in that cemetery. He just faded into the landscape.
So let's zoom out here at the end. We have unpacked the real life. Now let's look at the tally. The myth says he killed dozens of men.
The body count. If you believe the dime novels and the whispers, he killed over a dozen, maybe 20 men. But when you look at the verified historical record...
What's the real number?
Between 1 and 3.
That's it. 1 to 3 people.
Mike Gordon, maybe. Tom McClory, definitely. And possibly Frank Stillwell, though he wasn't alone in that shooting. That's it.
That is shockingly low for a guy with his terrifying reputation.
But that was the sheer genius of Doc Holliday. His reputation was his actual shield. He didn't need to kill people if everyone firmly thought he was crazy enough to do it. He was erratic, he was dying, he was completely fearless. Most people just backed down before a gun was even drawn.
Wyatt Earp summed him up best in his eulogy years later.
He did. It's a beautiful quote. He said, "A dentist whom necessity had made a gambler. A gentleman whom disease had made a vagabond. The most skillful gambler and nerviest, speediest, deadliest man with a 6-gun I ever knew."
That loyalty again. It survived everything.
It never wavered. Wyatt defended Doc to the day he died.
It's really interesting how pop culture has evolved on him. He used to be portrayed strictly as the villain in early movies. Now, especially after Val Kilmer, he's the intensely loyal sidekick, the tragic romantic hero.
We like him today because he represents a very specific kind of freedom. He was liberated from the consequences of life because he had the ultimate consequence, his own death, hanging right over him every single day.
Which brings us to our final thought for the listener.
We so often view Doc Holliday as a tragic figure, a life cut short, a brilliant medical talent wasted at the card table. But I want to flip that narrative for a second. Was he actually the most free man in the entire West?
Because he had absolutely nothing to lose.
Exactly. Most of us live our lives in fear. Fear of failure, fear of injury, fear of what people think, fear of death. Doc Holliday had faced his absolute worst fear at age 22 in that doctor's office. The diagnosis. Once he accepted that death was coming soon, he was untouchable by fear.
So here's the question for you, listening right now. If you knew the clock was ticking, really knew it, would you play it safe? Or would you be a daisy?
Would you stand in the street and say, "Blaze away"?
Something to think about.
Oh.
Thanks for diving deep into the sources with us today. We'll see you next time.